Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our town council meeting, November 13th, 2018. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thanks for coming out on this blustery evening. I think we're on our own set to winter. We didn't see fall, but now we're going to get to see winter. So, such as it be. I would like to, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda motion passes. Now, special recognition. Ed, America in Bloom.
We had the opportunity, largely because of the efforts of Susan Sweet and Annie Tarbut and the Ladies Club, to participate in something that was new for the town called America in Bloom. And she was a real pusher for this, and I met with she and Annie at the conception of it, and she would likely tell you that my initial impression wasn't overwhelming, and because I thought she was getting ready to ask me for money. So after we found out it wasn't really that, and that it was an opportunity for lots of different organizations in town to team together and work on a common goal. They had my endorsement, not that they needed it, but they had the council's endorsement, which they did need. And so she has really, really worked hard. I'm going to let her explain the process and anything she wants to say about it and the outcome.
If you're not familiar with America in Bloom, it's a national organization that encourages beautification in towns and cities across America. We entered this year and we had 2 judges come in the month of July, which is our most beautiful month here. And they stayed for 2 days, and we showed them around, and with Ed's help and Charles Harden's help and Annie Tarbutton from the Garden Club, and Jennifer Rogers did a lot to help us too. We gave them a tour they'll never forget. They thoroughly enjoyed it. Before they left, they gave 3 honorary awards to the city. One of them was to the Blowing Rock, and Charlie was instrumental in that one. He had the judges over to have dinner at the Rock, and they were very impressed. So that was one. Rumpel Presbyterian Church got an award because of their gardens and because of their community participation in letting the Garden Club have a community herb garden, and also because of their historical preservation of the Rumpel House, which is one of the oldest structures left on Main Street. The 3rd award went to the Ragged Gardens, which the judges walked by every day and thoroughly enjoyed. And we were telling them about the Friday evenings at the Ragged Garden, where the community was invited to come in. So we were very proud of those. Annie Tarbutton and I went to Kentucky last month and went to their symposium and their award ceremony. And they have PowerPoints, and they put up pictures from the different cities. And we got the most oohs and ahs for our downtown pictures. They were absolutely gorgeous. And we got special recognition for Blowing Rock's flowers. We were thrilled to death to get this, and we are now officially an America in Bloom city. We also got, do this, Ed. We're impressed with how friendly our town was and how beautiful our town was. And thank you, Ed, and thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Charles, for all the work you did with that.
We also were given this to present. We will hang this in our lobby and
this
let
one's
everybody know that we were the recipients of the award.
This one's going into the chamber, so anyone who walks into the chamber for information
we gotta find out if it fits the sign ordinance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Is Chris here?
Chris, Richard, Luke. Is anybody else from y'all's downstairs out? Y'all come in here for just a minute. Luke, you can call them.
Yeah,
Here's
this is
the
because
man.
of y'all. Thank you.
There you go, guys.
Hang on just a minute. I don't know if all of you know Chris Pate's on the left. Luke is on in the middle there, and Richard on the end. And these, along with Tyler and who am I missing? Kobe, yep. Represent our landscaping department. Unfortunately, the one on crutches is our stonemason. And he broke his leg pretty badly, but he has been here since day one of breaking his leg, continuing to work. So kudos to him, and we're glad to have him here. But I just wanted you to see some of the faces of the people who do the landscaping. They do a super job. The town does look great, as Susan alluded to, and as the judges recognize. So thank you for all that you do. And we have no doubts that the town beautification is in great hands with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
job.
All right. You know, it says a lot for what our town employees do. And, you know, I see many people that say in the summer, your town is beautiful. Hats off to you guys. Thank you. Now, that being said, moving on, we have somebody retiring, Ed Evans. Mr. Evans, I know you're not much for the politics of wars, but could we step down below, please? You know, this whole deal of politics is moving me. I've been in business. And to this day, that's still moving me. But, you know, I started, Ed was a big help to me. But I started looking around and seeing what all had been done and how quick it had been done. And how well Ed was thought of by all the town employees and by many citizens and the council. And I want to say that you're going to be sorely missed. We greatly appreciate your service. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Now, moving forward, we have another retirement coming up. Ed's going to take care of this, but also I had a 14-page essay that I was going to speak on for Ed Evans, but Albert told me I shouldn't. So, all right.
One thing I do want to bring up, the lady mentioned your luncheon was a factor. It must have improved since I was there.
Albert, my wife made that.
Mike Wilcox, would you please come in? I'm going to tell you a few things about Mike. A lot of you know a lot more about Mike than I do, because a lot of you have had the pleasure and experience of serving and being served by Mike for 35 years. He has a great concern for others. Some stories were shared with me about, Nicole shared a story with me about when she was pregnant and she wasn't feeling well, and it was obvious to Mike that she wasn't feeling well. I don't know if it was color or size or what. But he transported her to the hospital. I've heard stories of him going out and cranking automobiles in the parking lot for our staff so their vehicles would be warm when they left. Concern for others, I heard Mike is an absolute pleasure to work with. I've heard he came to get some employees in the snow when they were afraid to drive in. Professional. I've heard great family man. I can attest to that. I know some of the things that we've shared together, and some of the situations he's dealt with, and some of the ones I've dealt with are not too far apart, so I can respect the positions he's been in on a lot of those. Great to work with. A team player, a team guy. Always willing to help, always good to work with. Some of the more snide were Silver Fox, Sam Elliott with a full mustache, Jim Olander, which I don't know, some of you may know Jim Olander, guitarist. It would go on and on. And I can tell you that you're so well thought of by all of our staff, so many of our citizens, council. Mike was feeling me out when I came. I was feeling Mike out when he came. And it was obvious very early that we were going to have a great working relationship together, and we have. I can tell you that these things that have been said, I can ditto. Mike will do anything for me I ask. He will do anything for any one of you, even if he doesn't know you. If he can help you, he'll do it. He is going to be sorely missed. So I'm just going to say it's been a pleasure. Mike's been a professional. He's been a friend. He's been a great friend of mine. I love you, brother. This 13th day of November, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. Good luck to you, bud.
Good luck.
Guys in the back.
I'm surprised to see you outside.
Hey, fellas, thank you for coming. Be safe out there. Have a good evening. All right, moving forward, we need to do the approval of the minutes.
Make a motion to approve with, Okay,
On which one?
I did too. There's one on the closed session that has, Councilperson Powell.
Well, you want to go through each one individually and approve it, and make the changes accordingly?
Mine's just
Okay, let's do the approval of minutes from October 9th, regular town council meeting. Have a motion?
And you need to specify regular or closed.
Yes, that's the regular town council.
Problems in that
Yeah.
with one or the
the
other.
monument issue,
The monument,
is that the ninth?
I'd have to go back and read to know which one you're talking about. so.
Let's see.
It's, I think it's, this thing's all mixed up.
Here you go. Yes, that was it.
Okay, Okay, I propose one change.
Is this in regular or closed?
This is regular.
Regular.
Yes.
Hillary, it's on page 7, and it says that I advise research showed that there were more of these in North Carolina counties. What I said was North Carolina county seat towns.
Okay, do we have a motion and to approve with Albert's request?
So made.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Favor?
Aye.
Okay. October 9th, 2018, closed session.
Now you need to adopt the minutes as a whole.
Oh, minutes adopted as a whole for October 9th, 2018. October 9th, 2018, closed session.
So there's an approval of the closed session move was seconded, and the motion was made by the same person. So I don't know who, yeah, I don't remember who seconded or what, okay.
Was that in the
Make
closed?
a motion to approve for, with the
That was the closed
changes
session?
For
Okay.
closed session
Okay.
on October 9th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. In favor?
Aye.
Okay. Closed session minutes approved. October 15th, 2018, special meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay. October 22nd, 2018. That was a special meeting.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved. October 29th, 2018, special meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Approve? Min-
Aye.
Minutes approved. October 29th, 2018, closed session.
Motion to approve.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved.
Aye.
All right, moving forward, if you would like to speak during our council meeting on anything that is not on the agenda, please get with Hillary, give her your name, your address, and we'd be more than happy to hear your thoughts. Hillary, do we have any? Okay. All righty, moving forward on the consent agenda.
All right, on the consent agenda, we have 3 items tonight: tax release, a request to hold a date for Mayview Madness, and budget amendment. I'm sure that you've read those. If you need me to read them, I can, or you can simply make a motion.
Motion, I make a motion they be approved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda passes. We have no old business on our agenda this evening, so we're going to move forward to new business.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. There's a draft ordinance before you that's been placed in your packet. Ordinance number 2018-16. It is would authorize the building code official to have the Miller House and other structures at 712 Possum Hollow Road to be demolished and hauled away. The property has been condemned, and the staff has received no response from the property owner after multiple attempts. If you approve this draft ordinance, it would authorize the building inspector to have those structures demolished and hauled away if the property owner does not do it by December 10th. We do have 1 or 2 bids with some contractors that would like to do that work for us, and we'll select the lowest bidder. And those, what we spend to have that done would go against the property as a lien. Any questions?
Do we have the motion to approve?
So made.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Only thing I'd like to notify the, Ms. Green, when this is a plan, and that we approved it, so that she knows that something's being done. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Park Avenue North Side discussion. Ed?
Okay, since my arrival here, it didn't take me long to determine that Park Avenue is an accident waiting to happen. The sidewalk, as many visitors and even residents seem to think, is like 30 feet wide, and it has parking places on the edges. And so our Park Avenue has typically been utilized as a large sidewalk. And it's really interesting in that if you're coming behind them in a car, some of them are greatly offended if they have to move. So anyway, it became obvious that it is a safety issue. And so Virginia Tech, when they were doing some planning work for us, we asked them to take a look at that. They gave us a rendering of what Park Avenue could look like, and council was on board and adopted the Virginia Tech plan, and the plan was to be carried out as money could be arranged to meet some of those needs. Well, one of the first things that we wanted to do was look at Park Avenue, and so we did, and I presented in the budget for this year allocated funds from general fund in order to be able to make the improvements that we thought were necessary and very beneficial to the town. And so that work is underway. There was $123,250 was allocated towards improvements on Park Avenue. That included adding an ADA compatible sidewalk at 5 feet width on the south side. Initially, everything was on the south side. Curb, gutter, drain, new drainage. And so we were gonna make it look like it was someplace because it looked a little ragged. And so when we all saw the plan of some of the elements that would cause it to look better, I think everybody was in agreement, boy, this is really something that we were in favor of doing. So we got quotes, estimates on that project, and I'm happy to report, if you've been down Park Avenue, the drainage has been put in, the storm drains have been put in. They had hoped to have concrete poured last week for the curb and for the sidewalk. Our weather has hindered that. The weather for the next few days does not look very conducive to pouring concrete either, but they are still trying to have the concrete sidewalk and the curb gutter area poured they're hopeful before Thanksgiving. So all of that has already been adopted and it's underway, and if you go out there, you'll see there's a lot of work already taking place. So I'm happy that that has happened. Along with that, we had some concerns raised over the north side. Well, the new Chamber of Commerce building is on the north side of Park Avenue, and they don't have a sidewalk on that side either. And so there was consideration of, is there money available to do anything on the north side, and if so, what could we do? Well, it so happens that our quotes for the south side came in at a rate that is sufficiently lower than what was allocated, that we do have money to consider doing something on the north side. This red line is drawn from Main Street to the easternmost driveway of the Chamber building. And that, if you don't recognize, that's the Chamber building. This is the easternmost driveway, and then the westernmost is right here. So we got a quote to do from that driveway to Main Street, and it came in at $14,820, I believe is what it was. I have to go back to my notes and look. As we looked at that, and Kevin and I went and looked at it, and Sam Eisenhower with Iron Mountain Construction and Charles Harden and some other people who had gone in, and we started thinking, okay, well, if we're gonna run sidewalk from that driveway to Main, maybe we should run it all the way to this driveway, so that it looks complete in front of that property. And we have looked, and we have sufficient room to be able to do that. We probably would do a 4 feet wide sidewalk on that side of the road. And this one would represent the additional area that we would be talking about. It would be the red area and the green area. And, let me get my notes here. The additional area is 80 feet long, and we would be adding, these are rough numbers, around $8,000 more. So a total of approximately $22,700 to do from the westernmost driveway of the Chamber Building to Main Street. The total cost on that around $22,700, we'll say $23,000. That still leaves us with a cushion, because that's around $114,000, and we allocated $123,250. So we have about $9,000 left for contingencies. So we believe that people going to the Chamber Building, we don't know if they're going to cross the street and walk on our brand new lovely sidewalk. So in order to make it safe, and that's about as far down as most people would be walking on that side, because the rest of it's residences. So if we had a sidewalk on the north side of Park Avenue from the lower driveway to Main Street, we think it would make it complete. And we might consider painting a crosswalk there, or maybe right here at this driveway, across to the other side. But we think curb, it's not going to require much in the way of drainage over there. It's going to require curb, and it's going to require sidewalk, and the parking places on that side, because the space is limited, would have to have parking bumpers, like the concrete bumpers, so that people wouldn't pull all the way up and have the front of the end of the car blocking the sidewalk. So we think we're well within budget. If council is interested in considering this addition to the north side of Park Avenue, I think it's kind of a natural thing to consider doing. If we were talking about doing sidewalk from the south end of that green line down to Wallingford, I'm not sure that there's justification to do that, but I do think that the part that we have highlighted there in green and red would be beneficial and would create an additional degree of safety, security for our visitors and people who park there.
Ed, what about those, I'm just looking at the house where that white car is south of your green line?
That,
Are those public parking spots?
they are.
Would we need right away from that property owner to do a sidewalk?
We're not talking about going down that far.
Okay. I was just thinking if those were public parking spots to extend it down to there.
We would have some issues that we would have to work through on the legal end.
Okay.
We have no problem getting right away from the chamber, and the part east of the chamber, we already own.
Okay. Well,
So in some ways, we kind of took the easy way out there. We stopped the sidewalk at the point where additional information and legal work might be necessary.
okay, that looks good. I was wondering when I saw our notes about, we didn't have the green space in there, and I think it
Right,
makes
this
a lot.
I added when we started talking this after the council packet came out. So
Oh, good. I was thinking it looked more complete with
Yeah.
the whole property too.
Ed, is that gonna push those vehicles out any further into
That's
the
what I was
street?
gonna ask too.
No,
Okay.
it will not. We have
Are we
measured.
gonna be able to do lines
We
down through
are,
there?
we anticipate that we will be able to do a center line on the road. We have measured, Sam, Kevin, and I, Mike Wilcox, we've all been out and confirmed that we have what is required, and we will have enough room to pay a center line on the road. If it gets into any question after we've done it, we have even talked, we can change the angle on the parking places slightly back so that they wouldn't stick out quite as far, but we don't think there are going to be any issues. The measurements tell us we don't have an issue.
Are you going to the rock wall, or are you pulling it out from the rock wall in front of the
In the
chamber?
chamber, we're pulling it out just a little bit from the rock wall.
Because that sign's mounted on a,
Yeah. It's a
on a rock
stone
monument.
pedestal, so yeah, we've looked at that sign and
Is that gonna stay?
it is,
So you'll have to be on that side of it,
right.
4 feet?
Yeah,
Plus-
it's probably gonna be 4 feet there and 5 feet the rest of it.
I have a question. When we approved the original amount of 123,000, did we have a contingency in there?
We did not, it was just a blanket amount for 123,250, which would include any contingency that we needed. But we felt like initially, from discussions that we have had, that the total amount.
So now
of the
you're gonna have a
project was gonna be less
contingency.
than the 123.
So
so-
now you're gonna have a contingency of $9,000 that you could use for, I guess, engineering or legal,
That's right.
and nobody has looked at, you don't see anything in there like, when they tear up something, the road or whatever, that they're gonna find something weird like they did right here.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
Well,
right
when
here,
when they were getting the drain, trying to put the drain in, they ran into some, little
Well,
problem.
there's electrical all out through there, so,
Yeah.
and water, and we.
Do you
we-
think you'll have it on
we
that?
had to locate.
But
We think, and the water is on the south side. I don't know, Matt, do you know, do we have any water on the north side on Park?
There's some service lines going under the sidewalk to the PD.
Okay, it's just service lines, so.
Okay.
Those are not gonna be parallel with the road, they're gonna be perpendicular, so. And if we get into those, we can handle those, because they're just service lines.
But you think 9,000
We
is
think so.
enough? Okay.
And in all honesty, Jim, in having talked with, I hate to say this because it gets people's hopes up, but we think we're gonna be below the 91.5
Well,
also.
I mean, they haven't even mentioned anything on the south side
That's
for
right.
extras
That's
or
right.
anything like that.
Actually, in our discussion today, they showed me where we are already gonna be saving money and it's gonna
Okay.
be less than the 91.5.
That's all. I don't
You're
like
right, Todd. I believe
surprises.
I'd keep that crosswalk up there in line with the sidewalk that comes up by the picnic tables to keep them from walking up into the parking lot of the police
Yeah, I
department
think.
that way into the
I
park.
wish this was up to date, but you know, we have, area's all been redone.
Right.
And we've got both a handicap, ADA compliant, pavers going out to the sidewalk. And the new sidewalk is actually going to help improve that because the current sidewalk out there is sloped at an angle. So when we pour the new sidewalk, we're actually gonna get it up to the level of kind of flattening out that, slope that's on the handicap, access. But yes, we've got 2 sidewalks coming out there, and I'm thinking that and we'll be able to know more when we get this done. I don't know that we're gonna be able to paint it this year anyway, paint a crosswalk, but, you know, when we have it finished, we'll be able to look at it and see if if that is the best place for the crosswalk. It may be that we need 2.
Well,
Park Avenue,
initially,
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
initially I had some problems with it. But after looking at it, I think it's a safety issue, big time.
I do too, Evan.
But I spent quite a bit of time with Charles Harden, as he will acknowledge, and with David Barker, who owns the market. And David couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to say something for him.
Okay,
Now, be aware, I'm gonna paraphrase some things.
all right.
He is very concerned about his loading zone area. You may be aware of that.
I am.
And he asked me to ask us, I'm not paraphrasing here, wait until we finish the south side project and see how that works out. I'm not advocating that, I'm just saying, he asked me to say it because he couldn't be here.
Okay. I know that Kevin Rothrock has been in communication with David Parker, and I'm not gonna try to regurgitate everything that he told me, because I'll get it wrong. I don't know if Kevin has anything he wants to share in those conversations or not, but they have talked about the loading zone. They've talked, of course, you know, they've been using part of that illegally for parking their own vehicles anyway. But yes, the loading zone, we suspect, will continue to function just as it has in the past. There'll be a sidewalk there, but, you know, there won't be any problem with them parking at or on, even on the sidewalk. The loading zone is, I mean, the loading is typically early in, or earlier in the morning. It's usually before 10 a.m. So, you know, that's typically before we have any problem with too many people being here, so.
How wide's that gonna make it up at the top on the east part?
How wide?
Because the loading zone was put there because they were unloading and loading on Main Street. So that's why we asked that the loading zone be on that side. So if you're gonna give them a full area to load instead of them sitting on our sidewalk.
Well, honestly, the loading zones aren't utilized as they've been painted out there. They haven't been since I worked here. They're in the street. They do try to get over into the yellow hashed area, but they're not fully over into it any morning I drive by there. David does unload some stuff up closer to the door, and he's in his personal vehicle, but some of the big trucks, they're in the road, and in the morning, we have to maneuver around. The worst problem is when they do park in Main Street, in the middle of the day, trying to get out. So we'd like to eliminate that situation and get them on Park Avenue. I don't know that adding the sidewalk's gonna affect it in a negative way, especially in the morning, but,
How about the afternoon?
don't really deliver in the afternoon on Park Avenue. If it's anything Park Avenue, I mean, in the afternoon, it's out in the street. So
Is that something we need to fix?
I believe it's something that Dave and I can work out with his permit if he's gonna continue to do his project that's been approved.
Well, make no mistake, I'm not advocating for that. I'm not passing on what he asked me to do. I'm satisfied that any problem can be solved.
You're right.
So what do you need, a motion? What do we want to do
Do we have a motion?
We have the funding available. I just need to make sure that this council is willing. It would be a money savings if we don't do it. It won't cost the $123,250. We have the money to cover it and may still have some left. So I just need to know that this council is willing to consider doing the north side and give the okay. It doesn't require any additional funding.
If I may, counsel, is there not a savings by doing it now when all the construction equipment is there? in
There
place?
is. He said they can do it while they're here, but if they leave and we decide to do it later, there will certainly be a mobilization fee.
Tell me, aren't they gonna have to wait through the winter anyway, or are they
No, sir.
gonna work through the winter?
Their goal was to have this finished by November 30th, and the rain has set us back. We're hopeful that there will still be sufficient good weather to get all the concrete poured by before Thanksgiving. We've looked ahead at. the
Both
forecast.
sides?
Well, at least the south side. Now, the north side project is not that big, and it doesn't involve a lot of drainage and grates, so it's gonna be much easier to do than the north side, than the south side.
I'm just talking about your comment about saving money. You know, if it gets too far into December, they're probably not gonna
We
be
could
pouring
have
in.
a December that's more harsh than usual, but there have been, over the last few years, there've been
I just think it's
days
gonna
in
look-
all months, January and February included, where we can do work, and they're prepared to come piecemeal if that's what they have to do.
I just think it's gonna look nice, let alone have to do with the,
If you go out to Maine and look down Park Avenue now and see all the area where all the sidewalks been removed and they've got the gravel in and got it rolled
I'd like
out,
to
it
do it.
already looks
You wanna do it?
aesthetically pleasing compared to what it did.
I do too.
I think safety trumps everything else.
Yeah, you're right, Albert.
I like to
For the
make.
children.
Yes,
Is he
ma'am.
talking?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
Albert, you finished? I couldn't hear what you were saying.
You finished out?
I said I thought safety trumped everything I've heard.
I'd like to make a motion that we add on the,
North side.
north side, all the way from Main Street to the edge of the chamber, through the green line.
To the
chamber
west side of the
property.
driveway.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Well, we do have a gentleman's agreement that David will be completely involved in this.
That's, yeah.
And can we get the police involved on that loading zone issue, whatever, they can help us work out an issue to help him?
Yeah, Aaron and I have already talked, and
Okay.
the agreement I put together in this draft permit, would do that. David and I just haven't had an opportunity. I dropped off the papers, and we ain't been able to speak yet, so we'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a second on approving the addition to the north side sidewalk on Park Avenue from Main Street to the east side, or west
West
side of the Chambers property.
Somebody second.
And, yeah, that's what I said. We had a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward. We have David Harwood on the clean energy presentation. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mayor Sellers. Good evening, council, Mayor Sellers. Thank you, Ed, for helping us out with this presentation, and hope we're all queued up and ready to go.
We are, and I will apologize in advance. He sent me an email that I haven't seen yet today, and it had some more things for his presentation. I just have to apologize because I haven't even seen the email yet, so.
We'll get through it.
Do you want to go through this part first?
No, no,
So you just
yeah.
wanna go straight to yours?
That's the close.
Yeah. So, my name is David Harwood. I own an architectural firm here in Blowing Rock. And I've asked for a little bit of time tonight, probably about 15 minutes, because I've got some exciting information that I'd like to share with everybody. My goal here is to be educational and hopefully inspirational. And I am not selling anything. I'm only here as a community advocate. But a couple of things happened earlier this year that kind of brought me to this position, and I've done a lot of self-education over the last 6 months and learned a lot and very surprised, surprised about some of the things that I've found. And what I want to do is, I'm going to take about 5 minutes to talk about a couple of things. And I've asked Kevin Troyer to join us tonight. Kevin is the president and CEO of 444, which is a general contractor here in Blowing Rock. Because Kevin's got some very practical experience on the subject that I want him to share with you. And then I'll come back up and wrap up with a couple of things. So I've got about 15 minutes scheduled for this, barring any questions that you might have of me or Kevin, and feel free to interrupt me at any time if you've got a question. But a couple of things happened earlier this year that I thought were very ironic. And both of them kind of transpired in March of this year. So at the March Town Council meeting, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Harvey Ayers, who is with, and this is a mouthful, the Advisory Committee for the North Carolina Climate Solutions Coalition, presented a resolution to the town that basically called for moving from a fossil fuel-based economy to a 100% clean energy-based economy by January 1st of 2050. Now, that's 12 years away. It sounds like, I'm sorry, is it 2030 or 2050? So it is a little ways off. We got some time, guys. My math skills are not as good as other things that I do. But anyway, it's a really ambitious goal. So basically what Mr. Ayers was asking for, and this resolution asked for, is moving from fossil fuels to clean energy. That's wind, solar, hydropower, would also, by some definitions, include landfill, methane gas. But that's a pretty ambitious goal. Now, Boone has adopted this resolution and moving toward that. They were actually, if you don't know this, the first municipality in the country to say, we're going to do this. The council adopted this as a goal, and that's very admirable, but it doesn't have a lot of teeth without some actionable items. I've got a couple of suggestions tonight for that. But at the same time that that happened, I do a lot of design build work with Kevin's company. And I was privy to some of the things that they were doing. These are all kind of the brainchild of Kevin's company and Kevin himself. They are also a part of the company's sustainability initiative, which is not only clean energy, but has to do with recycling and some other things that they're doing. But what they decided to do in March of this year is go to 100% clean energy for their offices. And they've been able to achieve that through two means. One is they installed 12 solar panels on the roof of their building. Now, interestingly enough, these 12 solar panels provide for 50% of their total power needs, which I thought was really incredible. And the other 50% of their power needs comes from their participation in the community solar program through Blue Ridge Energy. And if you're not familiar with that, that is, Blue Ridge Energy has a solar farm, and you can purchase or lease, if you will, solar panels at that farm, and you get a credit on your energy bill. I personally leased 2 solar panels, and it accounts for about, in my energy consumption, for about $300 to $400 of savings a year on my tax bill, on my energy bill, excuse me. I wish it was my tax bill, but my energy bill. That's not as great because I have 2 people that moved out of my house and are now in college, so I'm not using as much energy, so I'm not getting quite the benefit I was before. But it's through those 2 initiatives by Kevin's company and 444, they are a 100% clean energy business in terms of their power needs at the office. And they've extended that to some electric vehicles and some other things that I'm not going to steal Kevin's thunder, but I want him to talk about a little bit. But I thought this was ironic that these 2 things kind of happened at the same time, that these 2 ideas came into play. And then in the months following that, 444 installed these solar panels. And I got a great education in being kind of privy to the information about these solar panels, in that there was some really good information on the return on the investment, how many years that they were going to get back on those, the warranty on these solar panels, the usefulness and lifespan that they have. And then I got some information on the electric vehicles and how they compared with the gas-powered pickup trucks that they were using. And it was very enlightening to me. Some of the notions that I had about clean energy, and in particular solar energy, were very outdated. And over the last 4 to 6 months, I've done a lot of self-education. And I thought, well, here's a company that has, by my knowledge, is the first commercial power generation installation in Blowing Rock. And they are doing what this resolution says that we should be looking at. And why can't we marry that? So my purpose here is to kind of do some general education, maybe be thought-provoking for the council and provide some inspiration so that we can move as a community toward a clean energy future. With that, I'd like to ask Kevin to come up and give you some real-world experience with his installation, and unless you have any questions for me at this time. Okay. Kevin?
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate your time. There are two aspects of this that I'll address briefly. One is the financial aspect, and the other is the goodwill. And they both have a lot of value. There was a time when clean energy many times was looked through the lens of idealism, or for people who had, big hopes to try to do something idealistic or altruistic, but it didn't really make sense financially. That's not the case anymore. Clean energy makes sense. It makes dollars and cents. These panels that you saw a moment ago on the roof of our office, the company that provides them, they're an American-made product. Company that provides them come with a 20-year warranty, and those panels will pay for themselves in 7 years. So there's a window there of 13 years of free energy that we'll be using at our office. Now, just because they're warranted for 20 years doesn't mean they'll inherently wear out. They could last in 25, 30 years. But we're warranted 13 years of free energy. Which obviously, that just has, financial value. And it's a very easy thing to do. You just need some south face, some sun, and that works, by the way. That projection that I said 7 years, that works in Blowing Rock, which is notorious for being foggy. Were you able to get the dashboard? We have a solar dashboard that comes with these panels that show at any given time how many watts we're creating, how many on sunny days, we'll produce 20 to 21 kilowatt hours. That's enough to drive my car about 75 miles. It's hard to see that in this photo, but that photo that the drone's taken is charging my car. The sun that you see on those panels is energy that's directly related going into my car that's turning into transportation, which leads to the second component of the goodwill aspect. It's a whole lot harder to measure goodwill than it is dollars, but I'm telling you, goodwill has a lot of value. And just to know, like, our team works in our office, the computers, the lights, the printers, all the energy in our office comes from solar. That feels good. It feels wholesome. It feels noble. And for our business, it's also a really good marketing component, because we have multiple clients putting solar panels in their office or in their homes that we're building as a result of this. Our team, the excitement that our team has about this, just to be able to work in an office that's 100% clean energy, is measurable. Something I would consider for the mayor and council to consider is, and this is my final point, consider the goodwill of, like David mentioned, Boone is already being very progressive and proactive in clean energy. If Blowing Rock would follow suit, what if the High Country, our community, would be known as a community, not just Blowing Rock, not just Boone, but a community that is taking renewable energy serious? People in their 30s and under, this resonates a lot. And we could ensure the branding component and a goodwill component and an excitement that we could ensure for future generations in positioning Blowing Rock to be a proactive, progressive community at a whole other realm. And people in that age group, in their 30s and under, it's really important. It's very important to vacation and be a part and live and work in a town that's proactive like that. Actually, another thing I told you is my last point. I just remember something very quickly. David and I both have students at Chapel Hill, and just outside of Chapel Hill is a small little town called Carrboro, North Carolina. I'm sure some of you are aware of it. Carrboro, North Carolina has 2 electric vehicles outside of Town Hall. They're the Model 3 Teslas that are charged. They have a charging station. These 2 cars sit there and charge over the weekend. I have a photo of them. And town staff uses these vehicles. And it works for them. You can do the math as it relates to electric vehicles. It doesn't take long for gasoline to offset the cost of vehicles very quickly. In my car, you see here, for me to go 100 miles on electricity costs me 20%. The electric costs 20% of what it costs a gasoline car to go 100 miles on gasoline. So every mile I drive, there's an 80% savings in energy itself. And it has real value. So I appreciate your time and consideration of this. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. One of the things that I was really impressed with the installation that 444 did was the return on that investment. Historically, I had always heard that wind and solar and other forms of clean energy were just too expensive. They were, as Kevin said, noble, but the return on that investment was beyond your lifespan, that you would never really recoup that. And that's just not true anymore. As little as 10 years ago, a 5 kilowatt installation that would power a typical home was about $8 a watt to put in. That would be about a $40,000 installation for a typical home. That today, in 2018, is $3.16 a kilowatt. It's come down that much. So that same system that was $40,000 is now about $15,000, $16,000. And if you look at the cost of energy, it's not going down, it's going up. And the return on that is less than 7 years. So I think there's a real opportunity, not just from a goodwill aspect, but also from a dollars and cents aspect, as Kevin was saying, to look at this. And I think that there are some immediate things that the town could do to put some teeth into the resolution that you adopted. And I understand it was a goal, but I think that there's some immediate things that you can do, and I think that there are some long-term things that you can do. But at the end of the day, I would like you to consider it. And as you go into planning in January, that you might take a look at this and see what are some baby steps that we could do. What can we be doing on a long-term basis? So I've given, there's a number of things, but I did include 4 things in my presentation material that's in your packet. The first one would be to lead by example. I think that there's a number of public buildings that Blowing Rock has, primarily the building that we're sitting in tonight, that are suitable for a solar energy installation. This particular building has an almost ideal south-facing sloped roof, almost at an ideal pitch for those solar panels. And there's enough room up there that I haven't done the math, and I'm not the person to do that math, but I believe there's enough room up there that you could provide 100% of the electrical needs for this building. The only reason that 444 does not have 24 panels that would provide 100% of electrical needs instead of the 12 that they have is because of our current land use code limits the amount of solar panels that you can put on a commercial building. So I think that by leading by example, potentially purchasing some electric vehicles that you're powering off of the solar panels that you have on these public buildings, not only makes financial sense, but I think it goes toward us being viewed as a progressive, forward-thinking green community. And if you don't know that ecotourism is a thing, it really is. And I think that as we transition and look at our marketing and look at being an inspiration not only to ourselves, to our children, we host thousands and thousands of people each year that we can be an inspiration to. The other one would be to set ambitious goals. Goals provide a communal way for us to express these ideas. to put some teeth into our resolutions. And I would invite you to say, you know, what can we do? Can we bring in an expert to look at our potential? What are the baby steps we can do and set out? A goal can always be changed and it can mature as technology comes in online and as funds become available. But unless we set some goals, we probably won't get very far. The third one is something I found out about in doing research for this presentation, but the Department of Energy has a program called the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, or the acronym is PACE, and where they allow local and state governments to loan money to homeowners and business owners so that they can use that money toward clean energy installations. And then they recoup that money through tax payments. So it's a way to minimize the upfront cost of some of these systems, and that the town can help out with that. And then lastly, I would ask you to look at our current land use code, and where there are barriers or limitations put on these type of installations, either eliminate those or minimize those. I know that the planning board right now is looking at a number of land use codes, and this will be coming before them. And so some directive from the council to the planning board, or as those recommendations come up to you from planning board, if you would keep those in mind, that would be appreciated. So I said I would keep it under 15 minutes. I think I was close. If you've got any questions for myself or Kevin, I'd love to answer those. We're always available, and if you'd like to come by, the offices, my office is actually, I rent space from 444, so my offices are inside 444s. Love to come and I can show you the system. Kevin would be happy to, he loves showing the system and how that works, and we can show you on real time on the dashboard how much energy is being produced. If you go to 444's website, there is a tab on there about their sustainability initiative, and there's a link that you can actually click on and see their dashboard in lifetime and what these solar panels are generating. We had hoped to have that up tonight, but that didn't work out. But I would invite you to do that. So that concludes my presentation, and I appreciate your time. Any questions?
Well, not a question, David, but you know that I've worried you and Kevin about this, and I believe Sue has seen this in Virginia.
Yep.
And I was so impressed, I put it on my house.
Which I did not sell to you, correct?
I emanated Kevin on that, but not on his Tesla yet.
How much,
I was gonna say yet.
But I want everybody to know, like yesterday was a horrible day. It actually produced electricity. It's hard for me to believe. Currently, I've got
yeah.
quite a few lesser panels than Kevin, but it's producing about half the electricity I've used at my house. And a statistic that you should know if you're gonna make this again is 2 minutes of the sun's energy equals all the energy that's ever been produced on this planet.
That's,
What are the
I
tax,
didn't know that.
what are the tax breaks for municipalities now? Are there any?
I don't know.
Are there still tax breaks for the residential homeowners that used to be? Carter administration had put those out in the 70s, where it was mandated a power company had to buy your excess power. Does that still follow suit, and do they pay a prime rate and a regular rate?
Blue Ridge, can I address that?
Yeah.
Blue Ridge Energy pays, the energy we sell back, they pay the same rate that I.
Yeah, they don't pay a peak, or, okay,
They did at one time.
right.
We got a 30, for the private sector, we got a 30% tax credit, 30% of the cost of the house is federal tax credit.
Yeah. I don't go back through the grid because I don't generate that much. But, so mine's much simpler. But it's,
So essentially, what you guys are looking for is for the council to take these four, lead by example, set ambitious goals, develop financing options from the town, and guarantee solar rights. Of course, that falls in, I guess, the planning department, does it not? Yeah.
These are 4 suggestions that we gave. I think there's lots of avenues toward a 100% clean energy economy. These are 4 that I boiled down that I thought were achievable in the near term, and that I thought that could give you a foothold as you plan toward this resolution.
So what are you looking for from council tonight?
Nothing other than just being educational. I'm not looking for an action item tonight. I just wanted to, I thought it was ironic that we had this resolution and that there are people out there like Albert and Kevin. I'm aware of some other homeowners that are doing this. As an architect, I'm getting asked more and more about this. I am not even designing houses that do not have electric vehicle hookups in the garages. If they don't put it in now, they want at least the wiring for it. The next house, I currently have my house for sale, but my next house, I will have solar panels.
Well, I have one more question. I'm sorry, guys. This just happened to pop up since we're doing some work out at the Rock. We fall under Category 2 hurricane winds. Anything above 3,500 feet in this county, if I'm not correct, falls under Category 2.
Sounds like a wind turbine area for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you volunteering that?
Is that a motion?
No, I was, Green Hill.
So it would be like a cell
but,
tower,
that's-
wouldn't it?
how does that fall into play for councils, because when you're installing that stuff, it's different here than it is down in the Piedmont or whatever, with windage, okay? So,
Well, there are certain criteria that the installers would follow based on that in terms of attachment devices and hardware and things of that nature. But I don't think in terms of any of that would be applicable would fall under the building code. So I don't think that would have to be anything that the council would have to worry about.
I have a quick question. Is there a chance that, that the planning board's looking at some of these things that we'll have, ready for us to look over in January? There's probably not enough time. I don't know if y'all already going through,
Right now, we do not have that particular section
highlighted.
queued up.
Okay.
We've worked through some sections. I think we're getting ready to start. Where's Kevin? Kevin's gone. So, I mean, if we need to move it up in priority, we're happy to do that. We
It
work
seems
at
to
the,
me that from a goal to talk about, as a starting point, this ought to be enough for us to chew on for a while. But if you have more information, that would be good.
I've got
January.
lots of information, as I was trying to keep it concise, and I'll share that with you.
Okay,
I'll share that with Ed, and he can distribute it.
and we
But
can take it up, and we'll take it up in January.
I've came across a number of really interesting websites. There are websites that can, through GIS and Google Maps, where you can point out your house on a map, and it'll tell you how many panels you need and what your savings will be if you put panels on that house. It's incredible stuff, and I'll be happy to share that with you.
Okay,
Well, to let you know too, see, that's what, over at ASU now, that we're taking down most of our solar-powered water systems and replacing them now with solar-powered electric systems. 'Cause, the feasibility just panned out for us, or for ASU, a whole lot better, to make that switch over now.
It makes sense financially. By 2030, and that's where I was getting confused with my 2050. By 2030, solar and wind will be the cheapest forms of energy available.
Well, I'd like Ed research the electric vehicles. Can you pull that up and just talk a little bit about, for the town use, police cars and trucks and four-wheel drives?
I can, but the gist of that was that there isn't currently a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle available for us to consider. And I don't know how far it's advanced even beyond what we found then, but the Sheriff's Association, the state contract, nobody had any vehicles for us to even consider that were electric powered or even hybrid.
And they did mention, though, that the police vehicle was gonna be out next year that would be, electric and four-wheel drive, because I think it was, the problem was four-wheel drive for us.
Yeah. I
So
don't think,
it is on the horizon for the
Ford.
town to be looking at.
Ford's
Good.
doing that.
Ford.
The Ford was coming out with one.
Yeah, I suspect there'll be some competitors jump into that market too as soon as Ford releases theirs. So.
I know that that's coming out. I know that Tesla right now is developing a pickup truck that's slated. And they also have a couple of tractor-trailer type vehicles that Walmart is using that are electric.
They've got a tractor for an 18-wheeler that has a range, I think, of 300 miles. So for local deliveries, an 18-wheeler that's all electric.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you very much for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Thank you,
Good
Captain.
job, David.
All right, moving forward, we've got Albert Yant, speakers from the floor. Discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This started February of this year when we, by the way, Ed, whoever did this chronology, my hat's off to you. The background of all this, it's good.
Yeah, good. I think we provided that back in February, but also, again, Hillary did it for you for this meeting.
Well, we, in 2005, this council, I wasn't here, but adopted this speaker from the floor policy, I think, which was based on North Carolina general statutes.
That's correct. You are required by statute to have a public, period. If
Right.
you don't have a meeting, you're not required to have a meeting to have that, but if you have a meeting, you're required to have an opportunity for public input.
So we did nothing but leave that alone until February of this year, when we changed the time or the placement on our agenda for speakers from
And
the
the
floor.
statutes do not dictate where in your agenda it has to be.
So that whetted the appetite of some people who approached me on several occasions to ask why the prohibition of speakers from the floor includes they can't make a reference to items on the agenda that are not sworn to. So that's all I'm doing, is bringing up some constituents' questions and concerns.
As mayor and overseeing these meetings, it is our job as council and mayor to listen to those constituents and to bring their concerns to the table. Being new at this, of course, after I saw this on the agenda, I talked to some other people that I know in different cities and how they do it. Their format's very similar, if not the same as ours. And I thought about it, and it's our job to bring this to the table in certain cases, other than a public hearing or things that are not on the agenda, okay? That's just my take on it, guys, as mayor.
Okay, so what are the pros and what are the cons of changing it?
Oh,
What are the pros and the cons? You asked the questions, why couldn't they talk about things that are on the agenda?
no, I
So
didn't
there-
ask the question.
Or somebody did.
Relayed question.
Yeah, you relayed the question. So what I'd like to know is what are the pros and what are the cons of changing what we have?
Well, to me, I think a pro is, and, you know, I'm here all night. That's what I signed up for, however long a meeting takes. But so that's not part of this at all for me. But it seems to be easier, and I don't know if we'll have people, if we change it, if it'll change people coming or not, but if people can, from the town can come and speak to us all together, this is the time to do it. We are not allowed to speak more than 2 of us about town business to a group. If we have a forum, then that needs to be a publicly announced in meeting otherwise. So if you want us all up here at one time and kind of get, I'll hear you at one time, this is the time to do it. And I think we should try to make that easier. And that's why we brought it up to have it at the beginning of the meeting in the spring. That was part of the reason to do that, to not make people wait around until the end of the meeting, because some of these meetings with presentations or whatever we're going through can take a long, long time. So I think it's great. And then it doesn't look like a group is speaking to just 1 or 2 of us and has 1 or 2 of our ears. Those people can talk to all of us, and we can all hear at the same time what people's concerns are. So I think it's a great idea.
Alan, are there any legal issues at all? I mean, is it?
I don't think this is a legal issue.
Okay.
No, what's the difference between speaking from the floor in the beginning on any subject you want to talk about, or speaking on public hearing issues?
Well, I think the difference was, to me, that I was trying to think through too, how is it different now? If we changed anything, if someone said,
But it hadn't changed since 2005 or before. There was 2 separate kinds of opportunities to speak. One was you can bring up anything you want to whenever you fill out your card. And then there was another time when they have a section on the agenda that says public hearing, and you have to advertise that. You have to advertise that. And on those particular situations, the people that talk had to be sworn in for some reason. Now I want to know is if we change it to something other than that, what is the reason for it other than, well, it's more convenient? Is there any other reason why you would want to keep those separated? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, we're not changing the public hearing. That's in the ordinance and in the law. What we're asking,
Really, there are 2 kinds of, you're talking about a public hearing where people are sworn. That's the quasi-judicial proceeding.
Oh,
that's
We also
different.
have public hearings where you hear from the public. They don't have to be sworn. It's just a public hearing because it's mandated by statute usually, but it's not a quasi-judicial proceeding.
So I think the question for me is, why are we not allowing citizens to talk about things on the agenda?
they can, right now,
They
but
cannot.
they have to wait.
They cannot. That's the point. That's the point. They cannot talk about what's on the agenda.
No, that's the whole point.
That's what we'd like to change.
That's people that ask me's point.
so if they wanted to talk about Parks and Rec tonight, they can't, or.
Is that what you're
this
telling me?
cleanup-
They can't talk about
Correct.
speakers?
Says it
Can't talk
every
about
meeting.
it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right.
And I personally don't want to see it go to that. To me, we need to concentrate on one item at a time, and if we start talking about what's on the agenda ahead before we even get to it, we might could have answered some questions when it comes to our time that the public wouldn't have had to got up and try and speak to or answer or ask. But then we will concentrate on each item of business as we come to it, instead of sitting back here thinking about what the public just told us about something we're not gonna discuss for another 2 hours. And we're gonna sit here, instead of paying attention to what we're doing, and start thinking about remarks for something that might be an hour or so later. So personally, I like dealing with it as we come to it. You know, that's my opinion of it.
So you
So
would-
you're saying allowing the public to talk about it?
Well, we do
When
now,
we-
when we get to them.
Well,
I don't know of many times that JB or Charlie has not let the public speak to things.
And I have, even though I don't have to, I have, because we work for you guys. And if it's a contentious issue, then people have been able to speak.
I don't think that we're allowing them to talk about any item.
Well, they've
on
got
the
all this
agenda.
time before the meeting to do that too, to talk to us, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't think we're all accessible. I think that it's,
What does that mean?
in other words, that the agenda comes out on Wednesday or Thursday, and the public reads it, and I don't think that we're always available for them to talk to us. So I think it would be nice to hear what they have to say.
They come to the meetings, don't they?
They can, but they can't speak about the agenda items, unless it's a public hearing. So,
Well, as Doug pointed out, and Charlie pointed out, when it comes up on the agenda, if someone wants to speak, he's gonna allow them to speak on the agenda.
he doesn't always, because he can stop them from speaking because it's against.
They go over
I
Robert's
can
3
stop,
minutes.
I can stop them from speaking even if they're allowed to speak. Other words, if I have
Even
three
if the
people, if I have
decorum-
3 people, okay, that want to speak on the same issue, and I'm made aware of that, and just do calls to save energy and time, you let one person speak for all 3. And I can state how much time they can speak, okay? But I'm in agreement with Doug. I'm afraid that every one of you know how to reach me. And every one of you know that, I will call you back. And if I don't have the answer, I'll send you to one of the council members or the town manager. But I just feel like that if we do this, then we could have had 10 speakers from the floor tonight on Park Avenue. We could have had 10 speakers on the clean energy with David Harwood and Kevin presented, which I think that's great. It's great to get public input. But this could happen before we even hear what's going on. Before we heard what these guys were going to present, we could have already had 10 speakers. Is that fair to them?
Well, I don't think that people are gonna be talking about something that they're gonna be given an educational
Well,
meeting on.
no. I mean, you're opening it up. You're opening the door
Well,
wide open.
And I think that that's okay. This is really the public's venue, and I think
But
that
we are voted in by the citizens to represent the citizens, to represent their needs, and to look after what they feel like they need for the community.
Yeah, we're elected to vote on it.
That's
But it
exactly
doesn't mean that
right.
we can't hear what the citizens have to say. And that's all
We hear
I'm
'em all the
asking is
time.
transparency.
Wait a minute, wait a
When
minute.
it's
Let-
not been transparent.
Well, if they can't talk on the agenda, I think that there is a point where it's not
They
transparent.
can call us anytime.
They can, but I think they may want to
My
speak.
phone's always been available. All you gotta do is pick up the phone.
Well,
I
I think
like the
it's nice for them
transparency
to be
thing.
allowed to
I
come and
don't-
talk. And I think the agenda items are fine. I think the public hearing's already set, but I think that they need to be allowed to talk about the agenda items. I don't think you're gonna get 30 people talking.
Well, they can't
We never
discuss,
have.
they can't discuss the consent agenda. That's always no discussion, even for us.
That's fine.
Unless
So-
we ask to have it.
Unless we ask to have it
Unless we have to
removed.
take it off.
Statutory.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah, I just think you're allowing people to talk and express their views.
That's what we're for.
Well,
But that's my thought.
Well, I think it's like Shakespeare's play right now. much to do about nothing, because we listen, and we have for years and years, to everybody. At least I do. We got 4 sets of stakeholders we're supposed to listen to before we even vote on anything. Now, at least I hope we do. I sure hope we listen to them. Now, I don't know, but I just want to know why it's necessary, that's all.
Would it be appropriate for me to weigh in?
Yes, Ed, please.
Can I?
Yes.
Almost every municipality in the state, and everyone that I know of, does it the way we do it. They do not allow people to speak to the items on the agenda. There must be a good reason. If there wasn't a really good reason, there would be lots and lots of towns and cities allowing you to come in and speak to the agenda items instead of the other way around. I would think that allowing everyone to speak to anything they want to, and this is taking public hearings out because that's a separate set of rules, and you're not talking about that, you're not dealing with that, that doesn't change. But allowing anyone to speak to an item on the agenda effectively turns every meeting into a potential public hearing on that particular agenda item. Now, it's not a public hearing because it's not defined that way, and it's not announced as a public hearing, and, there's legal requirements that you have to meet. But I would caution council towards making any change until this topic is vetted, perhaps with the School of Government, the North Carolina League of Municipalities, attorneys, everyone who has undoubtedly probably addressed this same topic before and trying to figure out how do they meet the needs of the citizens and balance that with the role and the duty of the council to make these decisions. So I would just ask that you consider at least getting additional information before trying to make a decision and figure out why it is the way it is. And I can't tell you exactly why it is. I know I did, when we talked about this before back in February, I did call several town managers in other towns, and every one of them said, "You're crazy, you should not do that." And they cited those reasons that I just cited, that you're turning every agenda item into a public hearing, or potentially doing that. So I would just ask that you seek additional input before you make a decision on that.
Doug and I are going to Raleigh on the 29th for our league meeting, and I'd like to speak to some of these people to find out why they either do or they don't, and bring it back to you and say, this is what I found out.
When are you going?
29th,
Can we put it on the,
December.
December? Sure,
would that be okay?
yeah.
And, we
Is
can,
that, do you want to do that, Doug?
and we
I
can
think that would also
instruct,
give time to approach the School of Government and get their.
But I'd really like to know why people do what they do. That's,
Well, I'll agree with that if you'll forego your form of bias against this thing.
I don't have any bias against it.
Well, do you want me to play a record of what you've been saying?
Well, I'm just challenging, I'm challenging, I want to hear both sides.
So essentially
What's
what we're
wrong with
saying,
that?
we're going to table this till
I'm certainly not
December.
biased.
Bring it back up on the agenda in December. Let's do some research. Let's talk to the governmental agencies. You guys get some feedback. There's got to be a good reason, okay?
Well, I think that there's
And
got to be.
let's find out what others have run into. Maybe others have tried it, okay? And let's see what they came up with, okay? Fair enough?
I would only support it if we put a sunset clause in, if we ever do.
Well, we're going to hear, it's going to be brought up in December, Albert, so there's no
I'm
need for a
saying
sunset clause.
My criteria is, it has to have a sunset clause. That would make us the trial. It would,
Oh, you mean like
you mean if we
a
approve
certain
it?
date, like at the end of a certain year?
yeah.
Well,
I mean, I'm going on the record
I
as saying that.
I don't see any reason to even bring that up until we bring it up again in
I'm just
December.
putting it in the book.
Okay. Make note, Albert wants a sunset clause. of this issue that we have tabled, and we'll bring them up again in
I didn't
December.
say I wanted it, I said it, that was how I would support it.
Okay.
So who are we putting in charge of notifying or asking in Institute of Government? Is that something you can do before you leave, or do we need the interim?
I can do it, and I can get assistance if I need it.
Good. Fair enough?
Fair.
Okay. All right, moving forward. We've got the presentation of the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Evening, Jennifer. How are you? Good.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. First Ed's lost it. In 2004, McGill and Associates and the Parks and Recreation Director at that time, Jamie Seda, created a comprehensive master plan for Parks and Recreation. During the January 11, 2005 Town Council meeting, the master plan was adopted. Our master plan is now 13 years old, and there's been a lot of changes that has occurred in the past 13 years. We would like to apply for grants to help with costs on all the needs of Parks and Recreation, and by having our master plan updated, it can help our success rate at receiving the grants. Town Council approved in the 2018-19 budget to have the master plan updated. McGill and Associates, along with our Recreation Oversight Group that was approved during the May 15, 2018 Town Council meeting, have worked on updating the Parks and Recreation master plan. McGill set up during 2 events in the park to get feedback and take a survey on what people would like to see in Blowing Rock. McGill has also created an online survey that was sent out by email, Facebook, put on the town's website, and we also handed out cards with the link to take the survey. We also held a joint meeting with McGill, Town Council, and the Recreation Oversight Group to discuss the draft plan. After several months of meetings and surveys, you have before you the final draft plan for your approval. And Jim Ford with McGill is going to go through.
Mayor, council, if you don't mind flipping through that.
I can do it, or you can hit that down.
That's what I'll do. Okay. Like Jennifer said, this effort has been largely about producing a plan that updates the old plan. After 13 years, it's no longer eligible for a number of grants, namely Part F, the state's Part F grant program. So what we were trying to achieve was a plan that was achievable, that served as a roadmap for the next 10 years, and that allowed us to be able to, as a town, go after grants that were currently not eligible to go after. So some of this information we went over during our work session, but I see a few faces I didn't see before, so I'm going to go over just a few things, but I'll try to be brief. We have about 1,213 people in town. Seasonally, though, that number does rise. So Parks and Recreation not only serves those 1,200 people, but they also serve the people that foster our economic development, our visitors. As part of this effort, we wanted to recognize that seasonality, this population in Blowing Rock that's different than a lot of other towns. We try to look at other communities in North Carolina that also cater to tourists, that also have a seasonal population increase. What you see here are your per capita expenditures. Blowing Rock is right where it should be for what it has. Its per capita expenditure is good, and when you compare these 4 communities to the rest of the state, they actually spend a lot more on Parks and Recreation. So you should be proud of the fact that you are serving the needs of the people appropriately. Jennifer mentioned that we did a few efforts to try to get the public involved. We had a few events we went to where we put up boards that did visual preference. We had a map that allowed people to show us where they lived and where they walked, because that's part of recreation too. This is a compilation of those 2 community meetings, what people said. Okay, the red and the yellow dots, 97 total participants. Overall, if I could summarize this, people love what they currently have. They want to see it improved. They love the playground, but they know the playground is dated. They'd like a new playground. They love the trails, but they'd like to see the trails better maintained. They'd like to see better signage. So what we got from these two efforts was a sense, a general sense from those participants as what do we need to be looking at more carefully? But that also led to items on the visual preference survey like the adventure play area that's shown here, adventure performance area. This doesn't mean that everybody wants this. It just means that the participants in those two meetings felt like these were important enough amenities that we needed to mention that in the plan. I will say these are also trending around the country and across the state. So it wasn't very surprising, except for the sensory garden and natural fountain, which most communities don't have gardening or landscaping as part of their department. So be proud of the fact that people here at least know that that's part of it and would like to see more of it. The survey. So in the last session, the work session, council members and RG members and other participants asked that we expand the survey duration. In so doing, we got 50% more participants, and with help of some RG members who championed getting the word out, we were able to include about 140 additional surveys. Overall, we had 415 participants, and I can tell you from experience, I've done this 10 years, that's a lot for a town of 1,215 people. That's great. That's a very good representation. I know at least Part F would be happy to see a number like that. Women and men were equally represented. I did an age breakdown. I felt like that's important because we have an aging society. The age 61 and over was the largest group represented, but all age groups were represented.
Jim,
Yes,
can I interrupt a second? Are these new slides since the new?
they are. These are updated from the 287 you saw before to the 415 participants that we have now as part of this plan.
Thank you.
Here was the big difference between in the middle of the process and after we expanded the survey. Nothing really changed. As a matter of fact, proportionately, they were nearly identical. There was one difference, and that is in our open comments. The last question we added, the RG asked that we add a question at the end that was open to be able to have participants give us any information they wanted. Largely, it was about we love what we have, what's going on with the Middle Fork Greenway. There was a slight uptick in the amount of conversation people had related to how we fee visitors versus residents. The plan addresses that. It's basically something that council would have to take up and discuss how they charge. But the plan recommends that it be looked at a little bit closer. This is something I showed you before. That's where we took those open-ended comments. There were two questions that did this, and we did a word cloud. This changed. It went from general classes to now people telling us in more specific detail they like yoga classes, fitness classes, etc. That didn't change from the first time, but we did get more people say it, so that was encouraging. The recommendation that we had posed before stood. The top 10 items did not change. The order did. Number 8 and 9 switched. But everything else stayed exactly the same. So with 50% more people taking the survey, we still got the same information. Jogging trails, open space, natural areas, nature-based recreation, outdoor playground, picnic areas, exactly the same as what we saw the first time. And that's encouraging. Our recommendations discuss how to take the existing facilities and make the updates necessary to achieve the desired amenities. Funding, I mentioned before, this one's really important to me because I like to know do people know how Parks and Recreation is funded, and what is their opinion on it if they do know. As usual, taxes is one of the lowest, along with fee and lieu. People don't want to be charged more. Contributions is always high, but this did not change at all from the first time we did it. Nor would you be willing to pay a fee to attend an event or special facility. We had more people answer the question, but it didn't change at all. People overwhelmingly are in favor of paying a nominal fee to use those facilities. So consider possibly fee increase or charging a fee if you put something in it. Additional open-ended comments at the very end, I mentioned, people were allowed to say anything they wanted. Okay, this is a word cloud of the literally hundreds of sentences people gave me. It's still about families. It's still about we appreciate what we have. You see that uptick, the words pay and fee. There was about 6 more instances of people mentioning, do we charge visitors in that format? So that was different. But Other than that, all the other survey questions proportionally came out exactly the same. There were no need to statistically change the recommendations anyway. So looking back at what we have, these are those facilities you currently have in your system. We all probably use these regularly. Also, private is considered in this plan. And we mentioned in the work session before, do people use things other than what we have? How do they deal with the winter or when our facilities are not accessible? We looked at that as well. Recommendations for Memorial Park: replace the 2 dead trees that were replaced at one time before, I think need to be addressed. Consider an additional picnic pavilion. A lot of our comments dealt with, we love the gazebo, we could use another shelter on this side of the bathrooms. It was probably parents and families that love the shelter we have, but like to be able to see their kids on the playground while they're using the shelter. So that was the consider additional picnic pavilion. The adventure themed playground. That is just based on the fact that people told us they really liked the adventure theme. What does that mean? It may mean boulders. You've probably seen the fiberglass boulders or natural boulders. You've probably seen ropes and sometimes zip lines. That's considered adventure themed playground equipment. They update the horseshoe pit. People like it. A lot of people said, I didn't even know it was there. But it probably needs to be updated along with the climbing wall, which is dated. Refurbish the tennis courts. A lot of folks came by during the second community meeting and said, we would love to see the tennis courts resurfaced, and they actually said they liked the artificial turf. So I would advise we continue to consider that as the surfacing. Broy Park, obviously there's a few places, that's been an ongoing project. Safety railing on the road bridge is important. There is some sidewalks and pedestrian issues that people brought up to us that we were able to verify, including the stairs, the American Legion building, and also a few other sidewalk improvements. Devant Field, that's one that you've probably seen a lot of improvements take place at recently. I still feel like there's some work to be done. We've got the space for folks to sit out during the games, but I think a covered shelter, dugouts would probably be appropriate. Signage on your walking trail. You've got a walking trail, but does anybody know how many loops you have to make a mile or half a mile? As somebody who's interested in burning calories, I'd like to know that. That's a recommendation. Performance event with stage platform. Now, this is based on the fact that sometimes that field is not a baseball field, but a great gathering place. Okay, it's currently used in different ways other than baseball, but there's not a platform set up where someone can actually plug in and get power, okay, or set up a tent. I think that would be an important addition to the park. The pool, one of the big issues with the pool was, besides ongoing maintenance and the concessions, which at one time you may remember when the pool was built, you could get concessions at the window. Then they replaced that with the vending machines. A lot of folks say when my dollar's wet, it doesn't work. Improve the concessions. So that's something I had to put in here. Expanding parking. Now, there's some talk in the open-ended comments that, what does that mean exactly? Are we expanding the parking for the pool, or is it for that entire area around the pool? And really what it means is the parking lot at the pool also serves Broyhill Park. It also serves people going to Devant Field, et cetera. So the interest from the public was expanding the parking. Annie Cannon Gardens. Some folks said they didn't even know it was there, which is interesting. It's such a beautiful place, but it is kind of down in a hole. I think signage is clear on the road, but I think maybe some wayfinding signage would be a good idea leading to that. There is the issue we mentioned before about the wooden stage either coming out or being repaired. Right now, the texture strips on the bottom are gone, and I think that's a potential liability. It needs to be looked at. Decorative water feature, right now it's full of algae. The cold's probably going to take care of it for us, but that's something that people noticed and told us needed to be looked at. Of course, the stairs are needing to be updated, along with the bench seating. Big recommendation, work with the garden club. You know, we've got amazing gardens in Blowing Rock, and Blowing Rock is known, as we saw earlier, for its flowers and whatnot. We've got people who know how to do stuff. I think partnering Parks and Recreation with these groups more so would be an important recommendation. Glen Burnie Trail, the bridge is gone. So we need to repair the washouts, repair the bridge. I was just out here 2 weekends ago, And there were people crossing where the bridge is anyway. So people are currently using it. I think that's a bit of a liability. It's one of the important, if you saw the CIP, it's one of those important projects I think needs to happen within the first 3 years. Of course, signage, for the same reason at Devont Field, it's nice to know how far you've gone and how far it's going to take to get back if you're winded.
It's a mile and a half down, but it's 6 miles out.
Right. Exactly. I found that out.
Couldn't you call Uber when you got down there?
Right. Corsham Memorial Garden, tiny little jewel of a park. It has wooden steps now. Of course, the plan recommends that you repair that. The easy accessible thing is just to put more stone back where the stone's washed out. I'd like to also recommend possibly in the future turning that into concrete steps. I know it's more rigid than what's there now, but something to consider for sure. Again, work with local garden clubs on issues like that. Generally speaking, I'm not going to go through this entire list, but accessibility is always going to be an issue. And as our facilities age, we need to continue to look at, are the sidewalks cracked, are the steps inaccessible, et cetera. Walkable communities is the big one. We talked about alternative energy. Alternative transportation is an even bigger issue. And ensuring that our sidewalks, et cetera, are up to date and ADA is very important. I think the Virginia Tech plan that we saw before for out here, that's something that's very important to consider. I think having a Part F grant may be something to look at to potentially fund some of those improvements, which if you approve the plan, you'll be able to do. But along with that, continue with the recommendations the original plan made regarding bike lanes, wayfinding, et cetera. Intergovernmental cooperation is still very important. During the work session, we asked the question, what are we doing to partner with Boone or with the county? The plan recommends you continue to do what you've done in the past and then some. Seek more opportunities to be able to use new recreation center, et cetera, for your programming. That is something that will have to grow out of this plan, but it's definitely something that shouldn't be ignored. Of course, that would lead to partnership agreements, et cetera. Natural cultural heritage inventory, I didn't want to leave that out because when we put new things in, sometimes we forget what's made us great. There's a lot here that we need to recognize through signage, et cetera. Something that a lot of communities are doing now. I think there may be some grant opportunities in the future as well. Staffing recommendations. I've gone ahead and shown you what you have. You're probably all aware of that. I think you need some additional resources though, as efforts to maintain the reputation of the landscape and take on more responsibility. I think council of the town should either continue with what they're doing now, hire someone new, or outsource. That would be a decision outside this plan. But certainly the need for those resources is there, okay, because you've got more responsibilities now. And again, with the part-time seasonal, continue that. As your programs increase, as more people come, you're going to need more staff. So the plan makes that recommendation as well. So with that, I'd like to say thanks for the opportunity. I think we had a lot of participation, more than I would have expected for a community this size. We had a great oversight group that was very much a champion, so I appreciate that effort also. We changed our survey, we changed how long we did it based on those comments. So we actually had direction from our recreation oversight group that sometimes these plans don't get. With that, I hope that you consider accepting the plan. I think it will go a long way at helping the town for the next 10 years. It certainly doesn't prevent the town from going after things that aren't mentioned here. It's simply a roadmap, and it also helps you get those grants. So thank you.
Jim,
Yes.
if you could touch on the, how do you say it? Part F?
Part F, Parks and Recreation Trust Fund.
Yes.
Mhm.
And,
It's a matching grant from the
right,
state.
and we need a plan, an updated plan in place to get those matching grants. That's
You
what
have
we're
to have a
missing now.
plan within 10 years. So
Within-
even if it were 9.5 years old, it would
Right.
still count. Unfortunately, the one you have now is 13 years.
Right.
So this plan is meant to give you an achievable plan that meets part of minimum.
The other thing is you kept saying nothing changed, nothing changed, nothing changed.
Nothing changed with respect to the proportion of what people are saying.
150 people, voices were heard.
That's absolutely.
Everything changed. At least for me as a council member, that's huge.
Yes.
So that was worth it, and I appreciate, that was probably a really pain for you guys to go back and extend that and update a few of your slides. But I think that was huge, and I really appreciate y'all making that effort and really listening to what we said by doing that. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Were you involved in this measures of activity report?
Measures of activity report. Which report are you speaking of?
Came with all this. The usage of the different facilities, the 16 different facilities
Right.
listed here.
I think that was something outside, Jennifer.
Yeah, that is what happens at the end of the year for budgetary reasons.
Yeah,
We saw it, but we didn't make it.
you didn't.
Jennifer made it.
I guess Jennifer.
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, you know, it's just, a little knowledge is dangerous, but I hear this all the time. It goes with 16 different usages of your program. From, the only place we break even on with people that aren't citizens here is, senior tennis, 50%. And it goes up to 92% of outside usage for the gazebo and swimming lessons. And is our fee-based structure anywhere near overcoming that expenditure?
You have to remember that just because, so you have a lot of people who live in Blowing Rock, but they don't all live in the city limits of Blowing Rock. So a lot of your school kids, who use our facilities and are here in this town are not necessarily town residents of Blowing Rock. So we are servicing a Blowing Rock area, kind of like the fire district. So it's really hard, I mean, if you change your fee base to, just service in-town residents, then I mean, I don't know what that would look like. I don't know how many people would.
Well, my question is, there is some fee-based situations with you, right?
Yes.
Are they coming anywhere near offsetting this chasm of outside usage? Or are the people that pay taxes in Blowing Rock picking up the most of the bill? That's the question.
I mean, it's a hard question. I mean, we raised, the fees are higher for those who are not residents to use
Understand.
all of our facilities. But if we raised it to a point to where only in-town residents used our facilities, then our facilities probably wouldn't get used as much.
Not nearly,
Right.
yeah.
When I looked at those usage, where it was town people, not the greater area, almost, and his question was, would we cover all of the expenses? The answer is no. We are subsidizing in a sense. Like the pool, my gosh, we could never charge enough. We could never charge enough to pay for the expenses of maintenance of that pool. We could never charge enough if we had a gate out here for the parades. That parade costs us something like $34,000 a year.
And how much income
And we
does
pay
it
for
bring?
it.
Yeah, but it brings a lot of people here. That's,
That isn't his question, though.
okay.
His question is, who subsidizes it?
I'm saying, I
The
don't
taxpayer
think
of
we
this
can
town.
charge enough fees to overcome this. There's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Would we even, most cities don't. Charlotte doesn't.
I don't know about
Greensboro
Charlotte.
doesn't,
I don't know about Charlotte.
or even Mount Airy.
I don't live in Charlotte. I live
Boone
here.
doesn't.
I don't live in Boone.
Newton don't,
Newton doesn't.
Conover don't.
Newton's got $10 million to redo their downtown too.
Didn't do me a bit of good,
What if
though,
we
did
had
it?
10 million?
Didn't do me a bit of good, did he?
I have a question, another question. Once we adopt this, with our bond, we can start moving on some of these Parks and Rec bond
Our bond money is.
is done.
Different.
Yes, it doesn't,
It's
it's not
different.
attached to this update.
But it could magnify our
It could.
bond.
Yes.
Yes, because
It
if
could-
we're eligible for grants and can get them,
Buy
then
one,
we
get
can use
one.
bond money and grant money.
Right, I mean,
Exactly.
Yes.
or however you wanna say it. Yeah,
Yeah, either you have a plan to, or you don't even, you might as well not even fill out the forms,
right.
because you won't even be considered.
So
Right.
the money we can use could be doubled or tripled or granted
Yes.
or saved.
I was interested in looking at the cost of putting together this plan. And what's interesting to me was that it would cost $1.8 million over a 10-year period. Initially, it would cost about $130,000 to $140,000 a year for the first 5 years. Some years it went up even higher. But over a 10-year period, that 1.8 million at a 5% inflation rate is 3 million. So when you go to face, I think, so where are we gonna get the money for that? To implement a plan? Say that you adopted this, hook, line, and sinker. Where are we gonna get, over 10 years, $3 million?
Well, here's the goal.
Because that's
Jim.
what you're
Jim,
gonna have.
The goal is to, if we don't adopt this, then we can't apply for grants, matching
No,
funds.
no,
So that,
I understand that. I clearly understand it. You can adopt the plan. I'm talking about executing the plan. So you can adopt it, but before you, I'm not saying you, just know that it's gonna be $3 million you have spent. That's without any, other than what's already on the board here, additional people or expenditures.
do you think we ought to address that in 8 years? What do you think? You and I?
I don't know, I won't be here. You don't have to worry about that. But I'm talking about the rest of you folks. That's the number. So when we say, yep, this is good, remember, that's the number.
Well,
Jennifer,
but if we have, I mean, that was my question. If we have a plan, we can get it might not actually be that number because we can apply for grants and all of that.
Remember that they're also, they're matching grants. So that if somebody's gonna, and I forget the number, but at the Greenway, I think it was, what, 80-20? Something like that.
Jennifer's got a response.
One thing I want to say is that our current master plan, even though it's 13 years old, throughout this 13-year period, council, previous councils and myself have looked at, even though it says, okay, this year we recommend that you build a picnic shelter, you put in a new playground, and you build a parking lot, whatever that may be. There's times where council said, you know what, this is really not feasible this year, or let's just do the picnic shelter and the playground, and we will move the parking lot 3 years from now. So just because this is their recommendation on, here's what you need to do, doesn't mean that it has to happen. I mean, it can be moved and changed, and things evolve and grow. So
I
It's
understand.
just
it's
citizen
not
input,
set in
so
stone.
it's things the citizens won't see done, but it is very much a roadmap. It's not a proposal to adopt tonight to spend all this money over 10 years. You know, you may only do 1 or 2 things. You may not do any, but it is at least a goal. It's a roadmap to try to get to those goals.
Well, it's a plan to get.
That's right, a plan.
It's a plan. This is where I want to be. This is where, if we were to paint it, this is what the picture's going to look like in 10 years if we adopted everything that's on the plan. If we can afford it. And I think that's right on. You got to have a plan. And you got to have some benchmarks along the way that says, how are we going to get there? What's our strategy to get this $300,000? We got it coming up in 3 years. We need it. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's
Jump
very-
into it rather than sit up here and say, yeah, let's go.
It's kind of like a comprehensive plan that we do.
Exactly.
So it's a living plan that we evaluate, you know, and re-go back every 5 years and try and reevaluate and move forward with it. You know,
Yeah.
that's all
I think
this
it's
is.
a dynamic document. There may be something that changes 2 years from now. Well, maybe it was a priority then, but maybe citizens have seen something brand new, and now they'd rather have something brand new than something that was in there.
Yeah.
I think I kind of equate it to like the Virginia Tech plan, where council examined the plan and you saw a lot of things in there that you liked, but clearly knew we didn't have the money to do it. And so you adopted that and said, Mr. Manager, try to find us money so that we can do some of these things.
Yep.
So,
Well, what I'd like to consider is adopting the plan, and then every 6 months, every retreat that we have, get in the habit of, in January, saying, okay, we adopted the Parks and Rec plan, and hopefully we'll do a new strategic plan too, but we're just talking about this one. But at the January meeting saying, okay, year one, they have these, 10 items for $113,000. Realistically, what can we do in the next 6 months? And then look at it, plan for it, get everybody ready, look at the budget, and then hopefully have some of that done, or all of it done in 6 months, and then in July, again, look at and have these goals and meet them.
Yeah. Well, years ago, we used to have a plan for replacing all of our vehicles. And we would set aside X amount of dollars every year to achieve that. We did the same thing with the roads, but we got behind. But we set aside, we'll say, $100,000. And when Hildebrand was here, we set aside $100,000 a year for roads. Nowadays, that would give you a half a road to repave. So we get behind. But my point was, you can do the same thing with this. If you say, look, at 5 years, we're going to need $700,000. Well, what's the way to get there? We need $150,000 a year from someplace, either grants or someplace in the budget, if we want to do this. That's all, gang. But I don't want to leave the room and have everybody thinking, well, the council last night just approved a $1.8 million
It's a comprehensive,
expenditure.
it's a comprehensive plan. It's not-
Comprehensive plan and expenditure for Parks and Recreation.
Albert, you got a couple of
I
questions.
got 2 questions, and I'm gonna shut up and go home. One is to Jennifer. The county's building a $34 million temple to somebody's prosperity for recreation in Boone. Do you expect that to cannibalize our program very much when it's finished?
No.
Okay.
I think that kind of like anything, when it's new the first year, you're probably gonna see a decrease in some of the things that we offer, but I think after that, people will come back. People will be here. Watauga County Parks and Recreation now offers kinder sports for soccer, and t-ball. Our program has not hurt whatsoever. Our numbers are still up there. It's not been affected. It's all in a matter of location and where you're at and where families work and live, and so it's convenience for them. I don't think
Thank you.
they're not building an outdoor pool. We're still the only public outdoor pool in the county, so I don't think that's gonna hurt whatsoever.
The next question up for Ray Pickett or Melissa, and it's something I don't think we've even touched on. You're the only people here representing the tourist industry. How many people use our recreation facilities that use your hotel? Is there a percentile that you come up with? That does happen though, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on, I mean, are you talking about like the parks, the trails, all of it?
Everything.
I would say probably a really high percentage, because, I mean, a lot of our guests use Glen Burnie, if they have kids, they use the park. I mean, that was,
Paying like American Legion, stuff like that, I don't think very many use
no.
that.
Well, I don't think that's ever been included in this equation we're talking about. But it is significant, I think.
They love our park.
Yeah.
Well, and they probably choose your hotel because they can walk to everything.
That's probably our biggest selling
Bass
feature
Lake
for
even.
our property.
I mean, not just the town, but to the,
See, we don't ever do that.
national park.
They can pretty much walk to anything in town, they can park their car when they get there and not move it until checkout.
How many? What do you think, guys? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the Parks and Rec Master Plan as a guideline to improve our Parks and Rec program.
Do we have a second? Doug, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. I'm going to call a 10-minute recess, and then we're going into closed session. Yes, sir. Yes. I'm sorry, guys. We do have the manager's report coming up. I'm sorry about that. I jumped the gun.
Does that mean we're not taking a break?
No.
9 o'clock.
Well, you want to go ahead and take one?
Well, if
You want to go ahead and take one while he sets up his computer?
What's in the manager's report, it's up to y'all.
8, is it 8?
They haven't changed the clock.
Huh?
I can go through it
Some
fairly
of us
quick.
might like to,
What would you?
If any citizens want to remain to hear the manager's report, we're going to do it really quick.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Sorry about that, citizens.
Yeah, this clock is wrong, by the way. Somebody hey, Matt, can you reach that?
It's
and
wrong
take it out?
even if you move it back an hour, because the hand is halfway between.
Alert the news media.
Well, you have my apologies, guys,
Real
so.
apology.
All right, so just report to you, the town council had given us the authority to dispense of assets that are surplus. The town sold several small assets on govdeals.com. Altogether, they generated $1,312. We got them out of the way. It included an auger and a blower for a tractor, the old basketball goals that we took down, old chain link fence I can't believe somebody bought, a concrete mixer that had about 4 years worth of concrete built up on it, and 2 old gas heaters, and all sales have been paid for, and all but one have been picked up. This next one is really good. This was consummated while I was going fishing, and I don't have any fish tails. Work on Sourwood Lane Water Project, which included the Green Hill Woods and a small amount of sewer work on Green Hill Woods, began on October 1st. The Green Hill Woods section was being completed first so that we could meet some weather schedules. It is now complete. The paving was done last week.
Wow, very good.
So I'm very happy to be able to report that to you. I was very happy to hear that reported to me today because I didn't know it when I met with Doug. So, and we have been and will continue as we move to different places on the project. We will continue to keep our citizens in that immediate area alerted through code red messages. The Park Avenue Road sidewalk, curb, and gutter construction began on October 15th. As I stated earlier, the project's well underway, and we hope that will be finished this year. Hopefully, a lot of it will be complete by November 30th. We did get the stop signs and the warning signs on Green Hill installed at the intersection of Green Hill and Green Hill Circle. We did send out code red messages to the people local. You know, it was kind of hard to gauge who we needed to send it to, but we looked at the map and tried to get that code red message out to as many of them as possible. Just report to you, and you can see in your departmental reports, the engineering for Sunset Drive is on schedule and moving along well. Probably have some documents to sign on that today or tomorrow, and get that to the state for some permitting. No dumping sign has been erected at the end of Skyland View. I know some of you were concerned and had heard from citizens. My understanding is no dumping has occurred there since summer. And when I say dumping, it's not refrigerators and tires, it's bushes and branches and clippings, grass clippings, that kind of thing. But anyway, we do have a sign up there now, and it should put the fear of God into them, and they should not be dumping. The Memorial Park donor tree, named the Giving Tree, the installation is complete, and I think it is beautiful. So if you haven't seen it, that pavilion there is all pavers. We have a garden area there, and I should have included a close-up. Those leaves that you see on the tree are 4 inches, and they're different colors, metallic colors, gold, I don't remember bronze, and what are the colors? Gold, silver, and bronze? And as we receive a contribution from donors for, I think we started off saying just for trees, but I think any donation of $2,000 or greater, those leaves are engraved, and there are leaves on the tree that are engraved. So go by and look at it. It's really pretty. Our guys did a super job. Those guys who were in here, and Tyler and Cody together, and Matthew. Anyway, it looks really nice. The Own a Piece of History road sign sale, you know, we had these old signs with the 4-inch letters that we were trying to get rid of, and I'm happy to report that to date, those signs have generated $2,450. We have a few signs remaining. The names of the roads that are still remaining are in the newsletter. So take a look at those, and you too can be an owner of Blowing Rock history by purchase of one of those signs for $25. Withers Ravenel continues to work on the acquisition of the right-of-ways for the Bass Lake Sidewalk project. They're currently working with the DOT on mandatory requirements, as I reported last time, and some others that aren't mandatory, but the ones they want us to see. I'm happy to report that Withers Ravenel and McGill, Brian reported to me, Brian Newman, he was at their meeting last month. They have been able to work out something with the DOT. This month, McGill was able to reach agreement with the DOT to allow an alternative directional ramp style at Main Street and Morningside intersection that has eliminated all but one of the previously required right-of-ways. And with that, right-of-way is being worked on. So we hope that that is getting ready to no longer be an issue. Reminder, Christmas in the Park is scheduled for November 23rd. Lighting of the town will begin at 5:45. Other festivities such as sitting on Santa's lap and telling him what you want will begin at 1 p.m. Christmas parade is the following day, Saturday, at 2 p.m.
Please let me know if you're gonna be in the parade.
Do what?
Please let me know if you're gonna be in the parade.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Middle Fort Greenway.
Okay. There will be a special town council meeting Monday, November 19th at 3:30 here in Town Hall. Purpose of the meeting is to discuss the town manager recruitment process, and a reminder that Town Hall will be closed on November 22nd and 23rd in observance of Thanksgiving holiday. That's all I have to report.
Well,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, I was louder.
I was gonna ask about
We didn't get a chance to thank you. I think the mayor kind of rushed your retirement. But Ed, I would personally like to thank you for your service to this town. I'm green still, but I appreciate your professionalism. You have saved this town hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know that people understand that, and I appreciate it. right down to how you spend money on paper and with Staples and working those Staples coupons. Thank you for all you've done, and we're hoping to run into you around Watauga County and hear lots of fishing stories in the future, but I appreciate your service.
Thank you, Virginia.
Are you going back in the Marine Corps?
I'm thinking about it.
He's got new knees.
I'm afraid that I am joint excluded.
Yeah.
Good point.
I had a question about the cart things. Is that program over now? for
The Apple
youth?
Cart?
Apple Cart?
The Apple Cart program ended the last Saturday in October. I had an email that I had asked for them to give me a total ridership. We'll have to give that to you in December. But what we did learn is that the Apple Cart ridership on Fridays was extremely low to none. The ridership on Saturday was much better, but it's still expensive for what we're doing. When we originally talked about doing it, Jim, we talked about, trying to commit to a full year, don't discontinue it too early. So initially, we had discussed starting it back up on Memorial Day weekend, Friday and Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, so late May. And, last year we were budget constrained, starting, the new project July 1. So if the council wants to continue that and see what it generates in June, end of May and June, that was the original plan. If it just seems to be too cost prohibitive. My only concern with discontinuing it too soon, I don't like spending money any more than anybody else, but I don't think you got a true picture from the first year. I think you almost have to do it 2 years before you suspend it altogether, unless you just say it's just so ridiculously out of proportion with what we're getting for it that we can't continue.
Now, well, you.
I went further than what you asked.
Yeah, my question was, the little signs that are around.
We will take those
We're
up.
gonna pick those up?
That's right. We will
Is
pick
that the
those up
plan?
and put them back out in May if council wants to
Yeah,
continue.
okay.
Any thought of including the Holiday Inn, the Green Park Inn, and the Rock
Well,
next year?
initially, when we were talking about the Apple Cart project, we were talking about an inner loop and an outer loop. And there were those that thought we needed to do the inner loop first. And of course, I think there's some people now who think we should have done the outer loop first. So I don't know which it is. It would be fairly expensive to do an inner and an outer loop, double what we're paying now. So I think that's one of the things that council's gonna be faced with looking at and trying to weigh and make a decision on that. Technically, we did kind of 2/3 of the way through, we did back up, punt, and included Tanger. So we did make that change, but, it could go from Tanger to Green Park Inn. We've already learned that it would be a 1-hour loop to include like all the hotels. So, and that would basically probably mean, well, you either have an outer loop and suspend the inner loop and have a central place where you let off, maybe Memorial Park. So maybe you could do the outer loop instead, or maybe you would consider doing both.
Or a combination.
Doug, you had to.
But the recommendation from the data produced was definitely, it was not worthwhile doing on Friday.
Doug, your comment.
Well, two of them. I wanted to throw in something there on what you're thinking. With it being an hour loop, it made you think, you was talking about not having an inner or an outer. You may just think of doing 2 on the outer loop to cut that time in half, if you
could do
decided
that.
to do something like that, because an hour on a loop is a pretty good while for somebody to have to.
Yeah, there's not many people that are gonna wait. If they happen to miss it, they're not gonna wait an hour
Right.
for it to come back around.
And the other question I had, have you heard anything else on Go Forth yet?
On Go Forth?
Yeah.
mean paving?
Paving.
They're finished.
I
They're
understand.
not
Where the
paving.
gravel was?
They're not gonna do the top
You
coat?
mean Green
No,
Hill?
no, they did tar and gravel
Don't go for it.
on Goforth and on Green Hill Road.
Green Hill's still messed up. I was on it today.
Is that the finished product?
Are they gonna paint the lines?
Yeah, well, supposedly, yes, and we're lobbying for them to do that, and Cully Tarleton is also involved in it now, trying to lobby.
But it's staying the gravel.
Yeah, that's finished coat, you know, that's the way they used to do all the roads in Watauga. Unfortunately, not many people like it, but it's tar and gravel and roll out the,
But we hadn't heard anything on the lines, we're still waiting to hear on that, right?
on the line, the center line.
Yeah, getting the lines painted.
Yeah, we're working, and also Cully, I had a conversation or email conversation, and he's working on that.
How about the rest of Green Hill?
It's on our schedule to do as soon as we have a good day.
Asphalt plant's closed
we're-
right now.
I don't know what
I'm
Matt
I'm
and
actually
Mike
asking
have
about
decided, and
lines,
I don't know.
striping, not.
All of your departments left, right? Yes. Okay, so I can say this, we're thinking about bringing them in Saturday. Bringing in Public Works to paint lines on Green Hill on Saturday. It is the best day that we have.
Weather.
We don't know if it's gonna work. People have plans already, so it may not work.
Yeah, the fog, I went out there in the fog and it's scary.
We do plan on painting stop lines on both sides of Green Hill Road and on Green Hill Circle, so people will know where they're supposed to stop. That doesn't mean they'll stop there, but, we're gonna plan to paint stop lines and center line. And they've been ready to do it, we just hadn't had adequate weather to do it.
I know the people out there would really appreciate it, would thank you.
I'm sure.
Y'all wanna take a quick recess? Okay.
Thanks, Ed.
Sure, thank you.
A quick recess. 10 minutes.
All right, I'll raise you.